Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining our July webinar. It's just on 12 o'clock now, so we're gonna kick off. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Oliver Giles from Lindum. We work on pallet stability projects, so fixing pallet stability issues throughout the FMCG and logistics industry. And I am very pleased to have with me today Mr. Andrew Mawson from EV Cargo. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, thanks, Oliver.
Is it EV Cargo or EV Solutions? I've seen both written down today.
We've got quite a few divisions, but EV Cargo is just fine. That works fine for us. We'll
go with EV Cargo. So Andrew is head of compliance and risk for EV Cargo. He's also the chair of the IOSH Logistics and Retail Group, which many of you be familiar with. So he's been in the logistics and safety sector for many years. We won't mention a guess on how many.
Yeah, definitely don't do that, Ollie.
And he's going to share some of his thoughts about the consequences of an unstable pallet in the logistics and transport network, or indeed an unstable load. So, welcome, Andrew.
Thank you.
We'll start by telling us a little bit about some of the current challenges in the logistics sector at the moment. Just give us a 2-minute overview.
Yeah. I think for us, some of the current challenges, which wouldn't surprise everybody, is sustainability. We've always had load security as a priority in the industry. Sustainability's coming along, and that's another challenge for us, which is great. And the whole industry wants to achieve sustainability. It's just a question of how. Load security itself is high on the agenda. It's probably not nice to talk about, but worst case scenario for all logistics providers, and indeed all retailers, is our loads not staying inside the vehicle for whatever reason, whether that's the result of an incident or something that we've got wrong. The point being, of course, that the more stable the load is, the more secure the load is, the less likely it's meant to be to leave the trailer or the vehicle. And that's our greatest challenge, is making sure that the vehicle's load stays stable inside the vehicle, and then therefore we are less likely to be involved in an incident.
Yes, I think that's absolutely key. If that load is stable, in essence. So, okay, that's really interesting. What you say. So, in the unfortunate instance that you do get a shot load or a load that tips over, whether or not it comes out of the trailer, as you talked about, sometimes they might just be a shot load within the trailer. What's the impact on you as the carrier?
So impact on us is several-fold. First one, obviously, is that there's an incident that we need to deal with. If that happens out on the open road, it could involve police, DVSA, who will be interested in why the load isn't secure and safe. Obviously, then it involves us in trying to put that right, whether that's one of our response teams that's got to go and rescue that load, put it right by the roadside before it's allowed to carry on, or even perhaps in some cases transship that load. And then the third thing is reputation, because we want to be seen, hauliers want to be seen as professional, as do retailers. And if that load is unstable, then the end user probably won't accept it, will reject it. And we've got that reputation then of, they can't look after the loads properly, which impacts not just on, because obviously there's a transport chain element to everything that we do in terms of load security and load stability. And you've got your consignor at the start of the transport chain, then your operator, then your driver, and it impacts all of us. And if we do get a shot load, whether it leaves the vehicle or not, then there are questions asked around, well, are they securing the load properly? Is the pallet fit for purpose? Was the load on the pallet correctly? Was it wrapped correctly? And all of that, then you've got that investigation side, the investigation that comes from that as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting what you mentioned about your reputation. So if your customer is giving you pallets that are substandard, there's actually risking your reputation as a carrier because of something that's actually arguably hardly in your control.
It's a two-pronged thing. I mean, we work with our customers to make sure loads are safe, and that's one of the things that we've got to do as part of the Road Transport Act. And there's an element of, one, we've got to make sure that the actual load is on the pallet correctly to leave, and that's the consignor's duty and role.
Yeah.
There's our duty as operator and driver to say, yeah, I can secure that load safely, I can transport it from A to B, and make sure that it gets there in the manner that your receiving agent, your customer, or whoever it might be, is actually quite happy to take it off the trailer. So it's a multi-role duty, if you like, right from the start, in terms of the individual or the customer that sends it through to our driver that delivers it, or any driver for that matter. But that's the key element. How do we make sure between us, it's probably an overused term, but as a team,
yep,
from the consignor through the operator to the driver, how do we make sure that load of whatever it might be sat on that pallet, sat on that trailer, gets from A to B and gets offloaded? And in reality, that's our aim, because we all want, if we're going to be sustainable, the best way to achieve sustainability is to actually make sure that that product gets from A to B in one go. Because once we start involving repacking, involving recovery and everything else, then that drives cost that you didn't foresee or want into your transport chain.
Yeah, and those are costs that you just can't sustainably keep, let alone the environmental impact.
Yeah, and just making sure that your load on your pallet or your vehicle is secure correctly first time, every time, is the way to avoid then not having to repack, rewrap, reload, etc. and so on, all of which drives costing.
Absolutely. Okay, that's very, very interesting. So just a note for the audience, if you're on LinkedIn Live, if you have any questions you'd like us to put to Andrew at the end, please put them in the chat, and we will endeavour to have enough minutes to answer them. I'm gonna just share a couple of pictures, which I think some of them are the sort of thing that Andrew's probably seen 150 times before, but right, if that's come up, Andrew, can you see that picture there?
Yep, definitely.
So what we've got here is an example. Now, I appreciate this is not an EV cargo load, so there's a little disclaimer there. This wasn't EV cargo, but this is just an example of the sort of thing that we're seeing. So you've talked about loads that leave the trailer. So we're not talking about anything that severe here, but we're talking about something that's had just looking at this, it's probably maybe a roundabout taken too fast, combined with insufficient pallet stability, so possibly insufficient stretch film in this case. And we've got a whole series of pallets that are all visibly deformed. So if this happened for you, Andrew, EV cargo, what would happen at the unloading dock? Just talk us through the process that would happen here if this was one of your loads.
Yep. So that would arrive at the unloading dock, and a decision would be made about one, was it actually safe to unload? So there'd be some kind of dynamic risk assessment done by the offloading agent or perhaps a manager, and they would say, right, yeah, we can offload it. We will need to correct it, but we can offload it. Or they might actually just reject it and say, we don't feel we can offload it safely because it's leaning, not secure, and they could turn that load away.
Okay, interesting. So if they did turn that away, what would happen then? Is there typically a fine to pay, or what?
Not in this instance. That there wouldn't necessarily be a fine, but what would happen is obviously then that product is late for whatever the customer, the end user, wants to do with it. Now, dependent on, and there are quite a few different sort of options, if you like, but dependent on what's next, that would probably travel to a local haulier depot or something similar, where they would, if they were able to, correct it, repack it, reload it, rewrap it, and send it back into the customer. If not, then it might have to go all the way back to where it started its journey to have that done at the location it started. So you are wasting, you're using excess fuel to do that. You're using another driver that could have been doing something else, and so on. So it sounds like not a very good answer, but it actually is, in terms of the fact that a decision will be made by the recipient. The recipient may well say, yes, okay, I can sort this load out, and they'll come to an agreement with the haulier about what happens there. Or quite simply, they could turn around and say, no, you've got to take it back to where it came from.
Yeah, okay. And for you as a carrier, if you have to take it back to where it came from, how long's the trailer going to be tied up with on that job?
Yeah, it's a cracking question, really, because that can depend on the nature of the shot load itself. So you could literally just be going back and getting the pallets offloaded by a forklift truck, in which case you've got that return journey, and then your trailer's back into use, probably not where you wanted it, but it can go back into the transport chain and start again. Or in some cases, when it gets back there, that customer might reload good pallets into the trailer, and you'll go back up to the recipient and basically start again with a hopefully then not shot load to make that delivery into that warehouse. So different options based on availability of another load or what the next plan is. But best case scenario, if you like, is that vehicle will go back to the warehouse, it'll get offloaded, it goes back into the transport chain. But equally, it could wait there until it gets reloaded.
Yeah. So either way, it's always a big issue.
Yeah, it is. Shot loads are, like we said at the start, they're not just a big issue in terms of what the receiving business thinks in terms of that load being not correct for them to offload, but it's also lost time for us, definite lost time for our customer in either having to rework or reload it. So ultimately, how it leaves the collection point is massively important. How it is secured to the pallet, how it's secured in the vehicle, whatever type of trailer you've got, that's so important in making sure that it actually gets to the end user in the way that both the consignor and the operator want it to.
Yeah, that's absolutely key. I was going to wait to the end, but I've just seen a question pop through, which is quite relevant to this particular topic. Somebody here is asking, when there's an incident of a shot load, how do you go about working out who is at fault, the consignee or the haulier?
Well, we tend to not. We try to sort it out normally together. That's the way we've always looked at it. You could start to apportion blame, but the logic of it is that actually, if it doesn't make it to the end user, potentially there could be some fault for both. Yeah. So how it's secured to the pallet, then can the driver and the operator actually have access to secure that load correctly, which is the requirements of Road Transport Act. It's a requirement of the DVSA, requirement of us as hauliers. Every haulier, every retailer has certain, whatever you might call it, procedures and policies, safe systems of work on how to secure a load. So right throughout the transport chain, it's hugely important that if once that trailer is loaded and the load is secured to the pallet correctly, or the load, if it's not on a pallet, is secured in the trailer correctly, and then the load on the pallet, sorry to be a bit, is actually secured correctly in the vehicle,
yep,
you've gone a long way to actually getting that load to the customers. Now,
yes,
that doesn't, there are still incidents on the road where we could have a shot load as a result of something that happens. Lot less likely to happen though if the load is A, loaded to the pallet correctly, or B, if it's on the trailer, is secured in the trailer correctly, and then the driver and the operator are certain that it's secured correctly. You're a lot less likely to get a shot load. And then, the idea is then that number reduces, and then that makes that whole transport chain load much more sustainable.
very much so. And I think that's important to remember, that you can do everything perfectly and something unexpected still happens. But if you do everything correctly, you do massively reduce the instances of it happening. So yeah. I'm going to click on to my next picture, which it's actually a video, which I know you've seen this one before, Andrew. I wanted to include this as an example of a pallet that is clearly not very stable. So this is somebody just manually just seeing if they can move a pallet, and to me there's quite a scary amount of movement in this that somebody can just do by hand. So if you were asked to move trailer loads of this product, Andrew, how would that make you feel as taking that on board your trucks?
Difficult question, because one thing I'm looking at there is it actually secured to the pallet properly? It's a bit of a fuzzy picture, but that would be, and so our view is that we are working now with our customers and consignors to actually get that right. Yeah. So that, because if that load is not secured to the pallet correctly, that makes the job of the operator and the driver much more difficult when it comes to securing the load. So it's a team effort. There's got to be a team effort to work with all three parties involved in the transport chain, so that the customer feels extra super confident that their load will get to the end user in one piece. The operator feels that they're giving an excellent, delivering the product to the customer, to the end user rather, basically in a means that can go straight on the shop floor if it needs to, or straight into the shop, whatever that might be, wherever it's going to go. When it arrives there, gets offloaded, it's ready to go with zero damage wherever reasonably practicable. And your driver then knows that he or she can secure that load safely with whatever means is required, and they've got the tools to do it. That's the key for me, is it's a team effort right from the start to the finish, so that when it gets to the end user, great.
Yeah, and I like that about it being a team effort, because there is no one place where you can say it's all your responsibility.
Yeah,
it doesn't work quite like that. That's good. Which leads me on to the next picture I had, which I know is a topic that you and I have discussed before, Andrew, where we've got requirement to strap product to a pallet. Now, this particular product, I look at the wrapping, because obviously I come from a packaging focused background, and think, well, this isn't secured to the pallet very well. And they're compensating with the strapping. But go and give us your thoughts on the requirements for strapping of unstable loads.
Well, it's I suppose really you've probably hit the nail on the head. In the picture that we can see, it just does not look like that product is actually wrapped to the pallet, which is part of the requirement to make it stable. And then you've also got how you might secure that with the ratchet strapping that you've got available. So we know as an industry, throughout retail, throughout logistics, that under 400 kilos you can secure with your internal straps. Over then it's got to be ratchets. However, and just looking at that picture, I can't quite see, but it does look like those straps are almost cutting into the plastic in an effort to hold that pallet securely. Now, I talked earlier about the team side of things. If this was done as a team between the consignor, the operator, and the driver, then what you'd see is that load would be secured to the pallet with wrapping. Then you'd see that there was some kind of edge protection or a suitable means of securing the load such that those straps didn't have to impinge on the actual load itself. Because they don't look like they are, but they could be damaging the actual product inside what the wrapping is there.
Yeah.
And if they are, there's a really strong chance that when it gets to the end user, they'll say, we'll reject it because we can't sell it as it is.
Yeah.
So,
which is as bad as having a shot load.
Yeah, in many ways, yeah. That's the last thing we want, whether it's the consignor, whether it's the operator, whether it's the driver. Last thing we want is shot load or load rejected, because, we've talked about reputation and so on, and that counts. So our ability as a team to make sure that, one, the consignor provides the load in such a way that it's suitable for the operator to secure it and the driver, so important.
Yeah, very, very important. That's good. So move on to my next picture, which is clearly a shot load. This to me is quite a severe one, but tell us, obviously you move a significant number of loads every single day. How frequently are you actually seeing instances like this?
I think, and one of the things I would say is, because of the team approach that's been picked up now by our consignors and customers, and is being helped along by the way operators are now working better with consignors and customers, they are getting fewer, but they're still there. And that one actually is, you may well get some of that off with a forklift truck, but if you look at the lean on some of the pallets, that could well end up having to be unloaded by hand.
Yes.
With all the inherent costs of how long that might take. And then whatever happens, however you get it unloaded, you're definitely going to have to repack it. And then you could have some of it damaged, which your consignor or a customer would say, well, look, I'm not going to send that because the end user won't take it. So then you would have to, put more product on to make the load up. So whatever happened, you'd be involved in delays, waiting time, and then the end delivery. So you're tying up equipment, people, fuel, whatever, to make that delivery, when if it was made first time right, then you wouldn't have that issue. Yeah,
100%. And I like what you've said about the team approach. I think it's really key that everyone, there's probably a lot of people listening who are from manufacturing or factories that are manufacturing products, and to get that team approach with the haulier. And indeed, we often get involved in that conversation as a packaging supplier, because it's critically important to have the right materials for the job, so that the end result is the perfect load at the customer.
Yeah, I've been at meetings, I've been at other forums where some people have said to me, yeah, once it gets on the truck though, that it's all down to you, isn't it? Well, no, it should be a team approach on, how, because the ultimate aim for all three of us in the transport chain is that it just gets to the point that it's supposed to get to, gets offloaded, we've done a good job, nobody's upset, that other road users are safe, we've no concerns around being stopped by the DVSA for an insecure load. Great job done, guys. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely brilliant. That's how it should be. So that brings us on to the next point, really, about how we go about solving this whole issue of shot loads and unstable loads. And I'll just put a couple of pictures in of the sort of thing that you and I have discussed before, the testing, and this is just showing an example of a tilt test, which is one way of getting a reading on the level of stability on a pallet. How many of your customers or network partners actually share this kind of sort of testing data with you?
Good question. Quite a few do. And for obvious reasons, not name them in the webinar. There's quite a few that are doing it and working together with us to look at it. We have it's a great tool to have, because we literally used to have to do this almost live with pallets and forklift trucks going back a lot of years. But now having something like this, we can see the effect of lean, we can see the importance of the pallet wrapping, we can see how what we can propose in terms of load security methods, everything from strapping to some of the newer kite type solutions that are available, and some call them umbrellas, but whatever you like to call it, it's actually driving forward innovation in the industry in terms of, we used to do things like just strap it and that'll be it. Now we're looking at alternatives to help make sure that our customers' products get to the end user in the right way. So I think it's a worthwhile exercise for anybody that's involved to see just what the impact is of your proper pallet wrapping and making sure you're securing properly. We're doing lots of work with some of our other customers in terms of loads that don't even go on pallets. They sit on the bed of your trailer, and it's massively beneficial in terms of working out what's actually required and being able then to work with DVSA and HSE to say that, yeah, look, this is the best way to secure this load.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're working on a lot.
It's good, and it's doing the due diligence to make sure that you have done everything that you can do to make sure that that load is stable.
Yeah, exactly that. It's making sure that you've worked through, you've done your testing, you understand what your straps are capable of, the type of straps you need to use, and then all that transpires into the training for the operator, training for the customer and the consignor as well, in terms of making sure that, you know, you might load the trailer effectively, but the second part to that then is, how can your driver and your operator secure that load to make sure it's safe to get to the end user?
Yes, that's very, very key. Which brings me to this other picture of a load that was when we undid the curtain of that one, it was described to me as a textbook load, which I think goes to highlight exactly what you're saying, that it's a team effort. So you can see the internal strap has been used on the end pallet, but each individual pallet has is proved to be stable. So this was at the end of I think it was something like about 150-mile journey. But no, what's your comments?
I think for us, there's a couple of things. Obviously, what we don't know is the actual weight of each pallet, looking at it. But were they to be over 400 kilos, then he would be expected to actually physically strap the load. And see that he's got the internals on, because you can look at the back, and he's got the internals in a cross at the back. So it's possibly being transported as a positive fit. That's what, you know, if you look at that picture, I think that's what they've aimed to achieve.
Yeah.
But without knowing the actual weight of each individual pallet, then that's a bit tricky, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, it looks like they've done it on the basis of positive fit. Yeah,
that's an interesting observation. I don't know what the weight is, but I do know it would be over 400. So perhaps we do need to look at the strapping, as you say.
That would be, you know, that there would be an excellent sort of learning tool, if you like, to look at what we've done in terms of loading it. And then the secondary part is, okay, we've loaded it correctly as the consignor. Operator and driver's duty then is to secure that. Have they done it right? That would be the question.
Very, very good. And just another question that pops into mind is, when you're talking to your customers about their part of the load security, do any of them use any form of certification, or do they present you with anything, say, right, this is what we've done?
Some of our customers are actively involved with us, and that's absolutely fantastic. And we're getting more on board as we go. It's to be honest, it's great. We definitely haven't had anyone come along and say, "Oh, well, it's up to you. You sort it out," which is what we need. You know, that from a retail and logistics perspective, I know I've sort of bashed on about it all through the webinar, but it is a team thing. And as long as we treat it as such, then we're driving cost out of the industry by actually getting the stuff from A to B in the manner that it's expected without any incident. And that's got to be good. And that also, you know, helps us with sustainability, because we're not taking that load back. We're not throwing away all that plastic wrapping that's failed because it's shot load. We are rewrapping it, sending it again. All of that costs money. And when you bear in mind our responsibilities under the plastic tax, making sure that, you know, it's 30% recyclable and so on, the least number of times we have to transport it, rework it, do whatever is absolutely brilliant. And I'm really pleased from a logistics and retail that a lot of customers are coming on board now and saying, right, we'll work with you, we'll make it a team thing, and we'll make sure they get to the end user in one piece.
Yeah, that's good. Your comments about this load, this picture we're looking at, I've just seen a question pop in from somebody. Bob's asking, what is the basis of positive fit? Which
marvelous. Well, we'd have to go until 1 o'clock for that. No, joking. Basically, positive fit is pretty straightforward in terms of the fact that it's got to be flush with your headboard, or a maximum of top of my head about 30 centimeters away from your headboard is as far as it can be. Then the important thing is that it's not the fact that the pallets touch each other, it's the load. So the actual material on your pallet has got to touch. If it can't touch, then you need some kind of packing in between the pallets to stop them moving. And that's both forward and sideways. End of the vehicle, as long as you're as near the end of your vehicle as you possibly can be without getting too technical, and you've got cross strapping across the back, that's positive fit, as long as you're 400 kilos or less. If you have, so that picture's wouldn't work very well, but let's imagine that you only had 3 levels of the drinks or whatever they are high, and you went 2 pallets high and they were under 400 kilos, still requires strapping, because it then becomes an unstable double load on 2 pallets.
Because it's stacked, you mean?
Yeah, if it's stacked, yeah, it's got to be ratchet strapped to keep it secure.
Yeah.
And then obviously, if you are under 400 kilos, you use your internal straps, or what a lot of hauliers are doing now, which is absolutely brilliant, is they're investing in the umbrella or the kite type load security systems, which sit in the top of the trailer and get pulled across. They're really, really moving forward in design and in improving technology, so they can be used as well. But basically, your positive fit up against your headboard, full length of the trailer, less than 400 kilos, internal straps, 1 pallet only. If it goes 2 pallets high, if it gets stacked, then you've got to use your ratchets.
Yeah, okay. That's very interesting, because we see a lot of loads that on that criteria should be strapped and aren't necessarily. So
it's a big learning curve in the industry. There was a lot of not a lot, that's not fair, but there were certainly cases where people would think that because they had an entire trailer full, then they had positive fit.
yes.
But there are other criteria to positive fit around, does it fill the whole trailer? And what a lot of hauliers forget, which is getting less, it's getting better, but if that load was an example and that vehicle went to the first end user and they took 6 pallets off, you haven't got positive fit anymore if it was a positive fit load. So then it becomes a normal load, and you've got to secure it as if it was.
Yes, interesting. Okay. Well, thanks for taking the time to explain that, because I've definitely learned something there. That's really interesting. That was the end of the pictures I had to share, and we're fractionally over time. But I did just want to ask you one more question, which was something that we've discussed fairly recently about a certified pallet stability level. If there was a certification that was recognized by somebody like DVSA or one of the authorities to actually certify that this product packed and strapped in this way is stable, what benefit would that be to the logistics industry?
Firstly, fantastic benefit, because obviously if we were given, or if we could make a clear statement around how we secure loads, that's great. If you look at the inspector's manual that the DVSA use, then there are very clear statements in there about the inspector's ability to view a load and make a judgment. It's always going to be better if the industry is working with DVSA and HSE in terms of whether that's innovation or whether that's current technology that we've got now, and saying, we think that by doing X, Y, and Z, we can make loads as safe and as secure as possible. You want to work with DVSA and HSE, we all do, because that's the way to achieve. Because at the end of the day, their job is pretty straightforward. They'd really rather not get involved in, PG9 issues and stuff like that. A lot of people believe that's what they get out of bed to do, but they don't. They actually just want to make sure that the loads that travel the country are safe. So they will, I've seen them at the Confederation of Paper Industries. I've seen them at various other conferences and so on. And they're open to the industry actually coming forward and saying, look, we've got these ideas, we want to do X, Y, and Z. And they will, in that situation, as they are now with CPI in terms of moving certain things, they will actually come back and give feedback and say, well, we think this or we accept that. So again, it's working with rather than going down your own route. If you think like that, we need to be able to say, as logistics and retail providers, let's get our load from A to B as safely as we possibly can. And if we do that, and if we have a mechanism for securing the load to the pallet effectively, then securing that load to the trailer effectively, and then whether it's positive fit or it isn't, or whichever way it's secured, that's got to be, because you are then giving the DVSA and HSE a level of comfort in how you are transporting goods. I'm not saying for 1 minute that that's an easy thing to achieve, but it's certainly something that we should look at, because we need, far better that we're having that debate with the enforcing authorities than just going off on our own route. Because if you take your own little route and then your vehicle gets stopped and they go, no, I don't agree, that's not safe, then you've not really made a step forward.
No, that's key, isn't it? So yeah, that's really interesting. It's a goal of ours that's forming, that I think I'd love to get there, that we have that recognized standard of load stability that is, if you like, recognized and perhaps even enforced by the authorities, and using something like UMOS or another body to come up with that standard. I think by working together as an industry, we can actually achieve that.
It's the way forward. We need to work together. One, because we're all, we've said so many times today, but we are all part of the transport chain. So we have a duty to work together, one, to make sure the load can be transported, two, it can be transported securely and safely, three, it gets to the end user. But it's also, it can only be good for us as an industry if we've got a means of securing loads that the enforcing authorities, A, recognise, and B, can say to, this is a long way down the track and we've got work to do, but it's worth doing it. They can say to their inspectors, right, if you see this at the roadside and the load is secured in this means, and it still looks secure, so it's been done properly, being applied properly by the operator and the driver, that's a step forward for us. And if it cuts down, as I've seen when I've been to roadside stops with the DVSA, if it cuts down the number of drivers who then either A, stuck by the roadside waiting for their traffic office to bring straps out, or they're stuck by the roadside while, heaven forbid, some kind of moving equipment's got to come to actually make the load, move the load again. That's got to be great. It's got to be good.
Yeah, it has. Okay, no, that's absolutely brilliant discussion to have, because as you know, we work on a lot of pallet stability testing, so we see a range of stuff that's stable in its own right and stuff that's very much not, and those are the projects we work on. So I found that really interesting discussion. We are slightly over time, so we'll probably wrap it up there. But Andrew, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for taking the time to.
Oh, thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
And I, for one, have definitely learned a lot in the last 40 minutes. So thank you very much, and have a great afternoon.